The definition of a website is really expanded to be a lot of different things these days. What best suits the end user or the customer is really what's going to put them in the best position to scale. We use that house building analogy, lay out the foundation, the structure, and make sure the plumbing's in the right place. And it's the same thing with the digital product.
Hey, it's Nate DiSarro, and welcome to Titans of Industry, the podcast where I talk to industry leaders and innovators who are at the top of their game and leading the pack in their fields, uncovering some of the best stories in today's business landscape. In today's episode, I sit down with Zack Hill, the CEO of digital design firm Feud. Zack tells us about the importance of creating a scalable foundation for your digital presence, his prediction for how companies will overcome the growing pains of working virtually, and his tips for leading a remote workforce, which he's done for years now. And now let's get to the episode. But before we do, it's important to know that whether you're a small business owner or the face of a multi-billion-dollar industry, your organization has a great story to tell, and Content Titan wants to help you tell it. We are a digital content creation powerhouse built for the 21st century, providing all-in creative, strategic, production, post-production, and distribution services for a 360-degree, 24/7 world. In our world, Titans are passionate, creative doers. They have the experience to take your project from start to finish, minimizing your involvement so you can focus on what matters most, running your business. So if you're ready to take your content strategy and production to the next level, our Titans are ready to help. Now here's my conversation with Zack Hill. All right, well, Zack, pleasure to do this interview with you. Thanks for taking the time. You've been involved in the digital space for quite some time. I would venture to say the majority of your career. So yes. Talk me through just kind of how you got into the digital world.
Okay, that's quite a story. So I started out very much background in education and advertising and marketing. My step into the digital world was very much kind of out of looking for a job right out of college, and took a project management job at a group called Flex 360, which is an entity of Arkansas Business Publishing, who I had some relationships with due to internships. And stepped into a world that I really didn't know hardly anything about. Did some web design in college as freelance and things like that, but had no clue about the true professional level of what all goes into the digital world. But it was probably, I look back at that and say that's probably one of the best decisions or things that I've ever done by happenstance, because that was 2007. And while there was a lot going on in the world between 2007 2008, financial crisis and things like that, the digital world was really taking off. Web 2.0 was a thing. Flash was dying. Social media, Twitter, Facebook, all these things were just now starting to take off. It was really the perfect time to get involved and really learn while all that was scaling up, as opposed to having to learn new tricks along the way.
I love that. So you get started at Flex 360, have the opportunity to kind of learn all these new things as they're coming into the world, which is a big part of my story too. I mean, I kind of tell people I grew up analog and then went digital, and so you kind of understand how the analog world works as you're moving into digital. So you kind of progress with it instead of have to pick it up 10 years down the road where all these things have already happened and you pick up the newest iteration, but you don't have the history to go with it. Talk a little bit about how that's served you well and how that's kind of put you in the role now of CEO of a dominant digital design company that's doing some really cool stuff.
Well, I mean, it's very much like what you said. I mean, it was an ability to say, okay, here's where the world is going at just the right time. The startup mentality was just kind of really developing, especially at a local level. I mean, I think it was something that was, well established on your east and west coast, but in Arkansas, the idea of a technology startup was really new, and it was a great opportunity to lay a foundational understanding of what all went into a product or just a website at that time, what's the best way of creating a database driven, or a dynamic, website as opposed to static HTML and some of the things that, was the, go-to at the time. And so really set a tone of what the future was starting to look like, and you started to see these social media companies, you started to see, these companies that were just completely living in an online, world. And again, this is post-dot-com bubble, so, everything that was happening at that time, wasn't particularly new. It's the technology was finally catching up to be able to support and scale, companies in this fashion. And so all of that really culminated in me moving into positions of working at large agencies, building out digital departments for them. That then layered on, the whole social and content directive and how important that has played into, your digital presence these days, which has then brought me to, where I'm at now of really overseeing, a digital solutions company. So, building websites and mobile apps, and, what we see is that digital transformation that's happening, and is extremely prevalent right now in the world. So, that all of those things have really built, up on, previous experience, to put me in a position to be able to kind of, from a strategy standpoint, bring a lot of value to the table.
So a lot of people now, I still hear people say all the time, well, I need a website. And a lot of times that term becomes very synonymous with, a handful of pages on a digital platform that people can go to and get information from. But within that same window, whether it's on a computer or smartphone or iPad or, however it's built out or displayed, a website can be a bunch of things now. Talk me through that transformation as you've seen it, kind of the Web 2.0, and then now digital solutions across the board. And we can even parlay that into, I'm sure, some of the conversations you've had over the last 90 days, and how people now are realizing we can almost only exist in an online environment. And how is that affecting you guys and what you're doing?
Yeah, I mean, that's really where so many conversations start is, I think I need a website, or, I need a website, or I need an application. But a lot of times people haven't really really understood what all needs to go into that, and really where do they get the most, kind of value, and not so much just them. It's where do the users or their customers get the most value. And so, yeah, the conversation often will start, well, I need a website. And then we start talking about, okay, what are you trying to accomplish, or what are the problems you're trying to solve here? And it quickly, you quickly realize that, the problem isn't solved with just simply a website. The problem is solved by having, maybe a front end, marketing website to talk about this product or service that you offer. But then you also need this portal, which is more of a web application, that people can log into and manage certain pieces of their business. You also may potentially need an application that talks to all three of those platforms, and interacts and allows people, to get that value and to solve the problem you're looking at. And so, yeah, the definition of a website is really expanded to be a lot of different things these days. And so we talk about, whenever we're, kind of introducing ourselves as Few, it's very much about web enablement, or web-based, platforms. So that can encapsulate websites, mobile applications, web applications, and all those things in between. But, really what best suits the end user or the customer is really what's going to put them in the best position to scale long term. Because if they, you can make an investment in a website, and that may solve your short-term problem, but if you haven't thought through, okay, how do we expand on this? How do we really make this a digital-centric product or service that we're bringing to the table? You're going to quickly have to throw something away and start over. You need to be able to be in a position to where, scaling can also mean adding on top of the initial foundation. And so you got to be thinking about it in that format from the beginning, just to get the most, value and bang for your buck.
Yeah, it's almost like if you were going to build your own house and you knew you wanted to start with a 2-bed, 2-bath, but eventually you wanted to end up with a 5-bed, 3-bath or whatever, you kind of want to start with that end goal in mind, knowing you're only going to build the infrastructure for the smaller one now. Is that kind of the mentality you guys take?
It's funny because we use that house building analogy almost exactly as you just laid out when we're talking to clients, or potential clients about not just about like how to think ahead, but also the process that we take. Very much focused on, okay, we're in a blueprint phase right now. We're trying to lay out the foundation, the structure, and make sure the plumbing's in the right place. We're not really worried about, the interior decorator coming in with their, paint and color swatches and things like that, because what that's going to do is distract you from, the core foundation of what you're trying to build here. And so we want to make sure we get that right. Then we can come in and add the pretty colors and things like that. Now, we do take design very seriously in everything that we do. It's the experience and all that really matters. But if you don't get the core foundation right, it's not going to set, you're going to move into that house, like you just said, and it may seem right, out the gate. But as you live in it, you're going to realize, well, this isn't really functional for my family, and so it's the same thing. You don't see contractors pull you up to in front of a house and say, I built this for you, I hope you really like it. It's a process to get there. And it's the same thing with a digital product. You got to have to, lay the foundation in the right way so that you can build upon and expand upon if you're going to want to in the future, but also forces you to think through what that future actually looks like. Because if you weren't going to do that, then yeah, the contractor can pull up there and just show you your house, and whatever you get, you kind of have to live with at that point.
Yeah. All right. So there's no escaping the fact that we're post-COVID economic, obliteration to the world as we knew it. Some businesses have struggled immensely to get just to this point. So here we are, roughly 3 months into this pandemic. But the conversation around almost every business, regardless of size, operational capacity, whatever they do, how do we become more digital? How do we either display to our clients who we are, what we do, how we're changing and operating, or how do we move our actual business to a more digital business? How has that changed the nature of conversations you have with clients, with colleagues, people in the industry? What has the conversation looked like over these last few months?
Yeah, the conversations, it's been quite interesting, but it's really been overall consistent with the type of conversation that we were having before. It's just now at a different scale and from more of a necessity factor than it is from, hey, I think this is the direction I need to take my business. Now people have realized that, through forced adoption, that they have to go down this path, whether they like it or not. I mean, if you're a brick and mortar structure business right now, and you depend on customers coming into your store, especially high volumes of customers, it's going to be a long time. Even if all restrictions are removed tomorrow, it's going to be a significant period of time before you ever return to that high volume scenario that you were at previous to this. And so the best options is to look, how do you offset that revenue? How do you create opportunities to to gain traction, gain customers, and particularly not have to rely on them being in your office or in your store or something like that. And the problem I think most people are having right now is identifying, what is that approach? Because I think what we've seen is a lot of innovation around people just trying to adopt to different formats, whether that be Zoom meetings, doing their workout classes or teaching or whatever that is. They're using all the tools that they can find at the best of their ability, and that's fantastic. But what's happening is as we start to move into a rebuilding recovery phase, everybody's tools are not going to be set up to scale. They're going to start to break down. They're going to be inefficient. And, ultimately, also, it kind of levels the playing field a little bit because now everybody is doing, used to one trainer may have done, a virtual, fitness class or something like that. Now everybody's doing that. But they're all doing it in different fashions, and some are better than others and things like that. And so, now you're not unique because you offer this virtual training solution. And now your virtual training solution may pale in comparison to somebody else's. And so it's ultimately going to be about the experience that someone's able to provide, and how do you kind of invest in that platform and be the one that kind of owns that and really could potentially create that next iteration of the great platform for virtual training courses or classes or whatever that may be. I think people have to kind of look at that and look at what is that unique factor that they bring to the table, whether that's a community element. Okay, well, you have a brick and mortar business that, maybe a restaurant bar, but you have a fantastic community, because of what you have at your, availability. Well, why don't we take advantage of that, do more, of a platform approach to the live streaming or the services that you're bringing to the table, to, again, it may not, ever be equal to what, your full volume capacity of the brick and mortar establishment might have been, but it can absolutely help offset the limitations that are being set on your brick and mortar establishment right now. The upside is, going back to the scalability factor, is that if you can find that right recipe of that platform and that community element or whatever that might be that people can latch onto, share, and do whatever they need to do on, the scalability of that is well beyond what that capacity of your brick and mortar building was. And so I think that's what the conversations have gone to, is it's less about people looking at this, baling wire and twine version of the solution that they have right now, and even not focusing so much on what is the digital solution that they need to have. It's really identifying what is that unique piece that can be packaged up and scaled, that people just can't get, in other fashions.
And I would assume too that once, let's use the restaurant example, they've got this community that they're moving into an online platform that they can essentially find ways to service and generate revenue. Once we kind of go back to where we want and are comfortable and the safety is there for the in-person experiences again, you've now just built an add-on revenue solution.
Exactly.
So your in-person is going to go back up, and then but there's a pretty high likelihood this online solution is going to maintain its level of revenue, if not continue to increase. Because like you said, the scalability, you can now expand that community outside of your local physical location.
Absolutely. And the idea here is also taking advantage of what does Facebook do or your Instagram algorithm do to you. It personalizes against your preferences and your experience that you're looking for out of that platform. Well, that's exactly what the future looks like for people who have this digital interaction piece that can live alongside of their brick and mortar experience, but also in that format they can have a more personalized experience, and it can even affect the personalization of their experience when they do walk into the brick and mortar establishment. And I think that's where people sometimes in their minds put limitations on, this platform can only do so much, and it's really it really should be something that lives alongside of what this their other revenue stream is. But like you said, really build upon, create a new revenue stream, and really they feed off of each other, so that in unique ways your brick and mortar experience becomes enhanced from the digital product. And say that someone's been invested in that experience for a long time, but then they've had to move to a location where they didn't, you don't have really a location there. There's still an opportunity for them to feel connected to your brand and that experience, and really, really build it out beyond just what's in your backyard kind of thing.
So talking about sort of forward-thinking innovation, what are some of the things that you're seeing or the trends that you think things are going to start moving towards? Obviously, artificial intelligence, augmented reality, these things, incorporating those into digital experiences are becoming more and more, I don't want to say commonplace, but usable, right?
Yeah.
We can now interact with anything on our phone wherever we're at. But what are you guys doing in that regard as far as like what you see the next big thing maybe?
Yeah, I mean, next big thing, I think is going to be the use of artificial intelligence to start to create that personalization, create opportunities, unique interactions and things like that. I think, if you had asked me the question 3 months ago, it might have been a little bit different because of the enhancement of an experience, a live event or something like that, or taking a live event and really scaling that out in a unique way, probably would have been more prevalent, before this pandemic. But still, I think it's kind of the same thing. It's really about someone feeling a connection through the technology and removing a lot of those gaps that I think we a lot of times feel like that the only option, but of really interacting with something is through a live stream or a video or something like that. And it's like more and more you're going to see like true in-depth interaction, virtual reality, playing a role into that. Or just even augmented reality, just little ways of visual cues and things like that you probably would have never thought would be helpful as you're just standing at on a street corner, but being able to layer in the data, the technology, the information that's sitting in your pocket with your location, or with the event or with the other people that are around you. I think you're going to see a lot more of that happening. And I don't think that is going to be, mitigated at all based off of the pandemic that we're kind of going through right now.
I think one of the big conversations around some of these ideas is because of the pandemic, it's sort of an accelerant to make these things move to market quicker as opposed to these new innovative ideas just coming up. Because a lot of these things have happened and been in the market. It just takes a minute for everybody to kind of adopt it and the technology to catch up. But because of this and social distancing and the reason that we don't all go have these shared experiences in person right now, I think it's going to accelerate, those experiences that you're talking about where we can interact digitally, but physically being somewhere. We long for experiences as humans. We want those experiences and we want to share those with other people. And I think the more that we can interact digitally, but it feel as real as possible, I think it's going to quickly become much more prevalent in most people's worlds.
Oh, absolutely. And I mean, you got to also think that part of the acceleration, it goes back to that forced adoption, and it's one of those things that's happening on both sides of the table. Whether it's the business itself, trying to, being forced into doing, e-commerce or online ordering or whatever that is. There's a whole group of people out there that are the general consumer population. And I think maybe myself and maybe you, we're used to probably doing, a curbside pickup or something like that. But there's a large population out there that if they were going to eat at their house, they were going to cook their meal. But now, it's kind of like, and if they were going to eat out, they would go to the restaurant. Well, now this has kind of forced a lot of people. It's like, well, if I want to support said restaurant or I want to purchase from said, organization, I'm going to have to go online. I'm going to have to, move in this fashion. And I think what a lot of people are realizing, they might have saw it as a barrier of entry previously, but now they're seeing it as, there's kind of a nice convenience factor to this. And so that's why I think even if all the restrictions are removed, you're still going to see an uptick. A lot of those people that were forced into adopting this new way of operating aren't going to leave that very easily. They now already have all the apps on their phones. They already have, an account with, this boutique or whatever they order from, and they realize they can order and get it the same day, dropped on their front porch. Okay, well, that's going to stay relatively strong, well beyond this. And I also think, you think of the remote work structure, and kind of everybody having to be forced to work from home to a degree. It's only going to up the people wanting more of that. That's going to be seen as a benefit. And when people are going to be asked to start coming back to the office, there's going to be people that have kind of settled into this new, working structure and realizing I really haven't missed a beat, working from home. Why should I, now an office is a great thing to have an option for, but why should I have to be there to really operate and do my job? And it's going to create a situation where if people aren't really recognizing that those employees are going to look for that in other places. And so, I think there's a lot of things like that are going to come into play over the next 6 months to 2 years.
Yeah, absolutely. I think the commercial real estate world is probably about to have a big shakeup. We'll see what happens. I mean,
Yeah.
I hope it's not something that's detrimental to the industry, but I think a lot of corporate leases are going to not necessarily be renewed, especially at the same, scale. But let's jump into the remote working for a minute, because I know that's how you guys operate, and you've done it since basically it was before it was cool, and it's worked well for you guys. So I know a lot of people right now are trying to figure that out. They've kind of been forced into it. Now they're at the point, do we go back to the office full time? Do we keep this as an option? So talk about your sort of strategy with remote workforce and how that's worked well for you. What challenges have been there along the way?
Yeah, I mean, the remote working in theory is a very easy thing to do, but it does have its challenges. We've been through that. I mean, Few has been operating as a remote-based company for, probably the past 4 years now or so. And it creates it's just as many opportunities as it does challenges. You got to learn how to communicate a little bit differently, but it also creates this format in which there's kind of built-in accountability. What you see a lot of times, and especially big offices, is kind of the wallflower, like, hey, because my butt is in the seat, that means I'm at my work, I'm at my job, and I must be doing my job. People just, hey, there's Nate, he's here, the job's getting done, kind of thing. That was the accountability, element.
Regardless of how many hours are spent at the water cooler.
Exactly. Because, or how many, what are you doing at your desk? Who knows? But the fact that you're there, the assumption is that you're working. Whereas, in a remote structure, it kind of forces a bit more open communication, which creates a lot more awareness of, at what times are people working? Are they really getting anything done? Who's dropping the ball? What's the holdup? That becomes a lot more apparent a lot of times, as opposed to when you can just shove everybody into a conference room of 20 people. That same person can kind of just sit back and let the conversation happen, and and kind of slip by to a degree. Not saying that person isn't doing any work, but they're doing just enough. Whereas what I've seen, especially as other clients of ours have been forced into this structure that we are used to, and we've been able to kind of roll right into no problem here. Other organizations, I'm seeing they're getting the benefit of a lot more open and communication and things like that. The problems that you run into and challenges that you run into is that if someone isn't a great communicator, doesn't mean that they're not particularly not doing their job, but they can quickly be judged as, someone that's not really, getting their job done because they're not communicating in the right way. So I think, what we've learned is, and in which a lot of technology companies do things like this, daily stand-ups and, things like that to kind of set the tone for the day, check in, understand, what support is needed where, and then leaning on tools, communication tools like Slack, and things like that to create a bit more of an ongoing communication situation as opposed to just relying heavily on email or phone calls and stuff like that. Obviously, the video conferencing, capabilities are there. What's been really interesting about this whole pandemic is like people have really adapted very quickly to wanting to have the videos on when they're talking and seeing each other. But it's kind of humanized everything a little bit, because now I'm seeing everybody's houses. Their kids are breaking into their, meetings, or at least mine are. I mean, everybody's got to meet my kids multiple times throughout this. So it's kind of created this, it's not just a client, client vendor relationship. There's more to people. You're getting a glimpse into, people's, lifestyles and their livelihoods and things like that. But also there's infrastructure things that come along with that, whether that be internet speeds. If you're in a rural environment, it's a lot harder to operate in that, format. And so, there's a number of challenges, but I think it's absolutely here to stay. It's going to be, one of those things that I think is a benefit that people are looking for in their, in their work structure.
I completely agree. I think it's been really fascinating, the speed at which people have adopted, remote working and figured out tools and all that. But it's also been kind of fascinating to see the learning curve that some people have had to figure out on their own, even though a lot of people have tested out or done versions of remote work before. Some of these companies, it's funny, all the memes you see and all the things you see online, people forgetting they're on an actual video call, wherever they might be in the house, what they're wearing or not wearing, and stand up in the middle of an interview. But, I think those kinds of things are going to become a trial by error. But I think the productivity is an interesting aspect of it, because I do think, I let my people work from home basically whenever they can. And, it's interesting, the productivity difference, because you don't have as many distractions. It also lets them feel the freedom if they need to run an errand in the middle of the day. Nobody's going to be like, where's so-and-so? They just kind of have the freedom to do it. And essentially, if you set the benchmarks and want the work done by a certain time, then give them the freedom to do that. It allows for a lot less micromanaging. For most people, that's a good thing. For some people, it's a bad thing. And so you just kind of have to figure out, I think, how do you manage these people on their personality style and their work habits. And so as a leader, how does that challenge you to make sure that you're managing from a personality basis versus can you manage the same for everybody remotely? Well,
I think as a leader, it's really tough to manage everybody in the same format in a remote structure. The fact of the matter is that some people just aren't really, cut out for it. If you give them too much leeway, too much, opportunity to run that errand and do things like that and stuff. Not saying that that's a bad thing, but there's just like with anything in this world, people it's in their nature to start to take advantage of things and stuff like that. What we've focused on is more of the type of person that we look for whenever we are hiring and stuff like that. And it's people who, that we feel very confident in, that there doesn't have to be somebody really managing them, Not saying that they don't have someone overseeing the work that they're doing or something like that, but it's really just this mentality of being a self-starter, taken a lot of pride in your work and your capability of getting something done, really reduces the need for you to still be overbearing or, looking over someone's shoulder virtually over, of what they're going to do, and it goes back to, like I was saying, it's like there's kind of built-in accountability. If somebody, I think the communication has to happen around expectations on the front end, when something can be done and at what time period something is expected to be done. And if habitually it's not getting done, then there's probably conversations to be had. If those expectations are set and you never have a problem with, those expectations being met, I personally don't care how many errands that person ran in the day, because they met my expectations, they got the job done, and in our scenario, most likely it's a fantastic job. So it's like, there's some times where we get deliverables from, one of our designers or something like that, and I'm just blown away by it. The client's blown away by it, and then you find out that they took their dog to the vet that day or something, and you're like, that's amazing. Like, that's fantastic. They're like, the balance is there, the work-life balance is there, and they're killing it at their job. So, there's no reason, to suspect that down the road that person, if the expectations are set and they understand those, that they're going to put themselves in a position to where they're not able to meet them.
And especially in I think there's a line of creativity and technical ability that comes with most of your people, and it's the way it is with my team as well. And one of the things I notice is, some people don't get really going until about 11 a.m. And so if you require them to be in the office at 9, you're really burning 2 hours of what you're paying them to be there for, and they're just not ready to go yet. But they'll work till 10 p.m. And they'll have their best ideas late in the day. But if the office is already closed, everybody's gone home, they feel like they should leave too. So you're really missing out on sort of the best experience you can get from that employee. And I think this is really going to be an eye-opening thing for a lot of businesses to see, like, we can actually get more for less hours or different times a day, depending on the business, of course.
Yeah. And I think it's not something that's probably always going to be, it's not going to be an option for every business out there. But I do think that if anything, the last few months is really showed you what the options are, and if it hasn't shown the employer, it's definitely shown the employee, and they're going to know what they can and can't do in a remote structure, and still get their job done and excel at their career. That goes back to, if you're not going to understand that as an employer, they're going to find one that does. It's going to be a benefit to them. But I will say that there's going to be situations in which it's going to help, just not just the best work hours that somebody brings to the table. I live almost 30 minutes outside of Little Rock proper. It's like just by working from home or working in a remote structure, that's an hour a day, that may not go into work. It could, though. It could be a situation where something's happening. I'm waking up to, something's on fire per se, and I'm able to address that immediately and not have to worry about the whole getting ready and getting into the office and those situations. Or it's just an opportunity to have a bit more built-in time for your family, for that errand or whatever that is. So it doesn't really particularly mean that you're sacrificing work hours. It just means that now the hours that were probably sacrificing work beforehand for somebody to be able to do their online shopping or pay their bills or do whatever that errand might be, that was costing you, within the constructs that, that you were wanting to work in. Now there's more flexibility for those things to fall outside of those work hours. And I mean, we've seen that for years, and I think it's something that people are getting a much clearer picture on what the options are, at least.
I know every business has kind of had to deal with different things for these last few months, and some have dealt with an influx of business if they're in that sort of industry, and others have dealt with a loss of revenue and had to furlough or lay people off. And there's just been a wide gamut of what everyone's had to go through. So what's one of the challenges that you've had to kind of overcome during these last few months?
Yeah. Just one challenge? Okay. I would say, just with everything, probably the biggest thing is we are as an agency, you're a service-based, and very similar to, your operations, very service-based. You're kind of you're kind of the last one on the list, kind of thing. Whenever things are happening with these businesses, your livelihood is dependent on the success and the growth and the expansion of someone else's business, and so I think you kind of have to take the approach of, okay, where do these opportunities lie to continue to just kind of maintain or survive and things like that. And you also are having to be reactionary to other people's businesses. So it'd be a little bit different if you were, 100%, self-sustained and you didn't have to worry about clients per se. So I would say probably one of our biggest challenges has been kind of feeling out what, each individual client's situation, and understanding that this client may feel very confident in this moment, but a week from now, they can lose that one contract, which then, a week later they're feeling like, well, we can continue to do what we're planning on doing, and hopefully, close that gap. But then it's, the next week is when, oh, the wheels are coming off. Let's start canceling everything. And so, luckily we haven't had a lot of those situations happen, but it really has been us keeping our fingers on the pulse of a ton of other businesses, not just our own, to say, okay, where does everybody stand? What is going on? And trying to be as just, helpful, transparent as possible on our side of things to create, that reciprocity of, hey, tell us the real picture of what's going on. Do we need to be planning on doing something different, cutting budgets, doing things like that, so that we just can plan, as best as we can. And so I think that's probably been, and it's a challenge for anybody in the service-based business. And so as those things happen, you kind of have to react to it. It's a lot harder to be in front of and ahead of the curve on some of these things when you're in that type of industry.
Yeah. When you think about how you lead your business, how you come up with new ideas or opportunities to execute at a high level, because I know you guys have some really cool clients and people doing some fun stuff, who are some of the people that have sort of either helped pave the way for you that you pay attention to, either on a global scale or personally that and who are some of those mentors and people that you kind of reach out to, especially in times like this, and say, what do I do? I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, what's interesting is, some of the mentors and stuff that I have, they're dealing with their own struggles right now too. I mean, they're all, it's a cliche term, but we are all in this together, as you know.
Absolutely.
And so everybody's kind of grappling with the same things. I think, what I've been attracted to more than anything is more of a mindset that what I'm seeing out of the great leaders that I consider mentors and stuff like that. It's in situations like this that you got to be looking for those opportunities to innovate and those opportunities to, while it seems very counterintuitive, how can we be expanding right now? It's very easy to just say, I'm going to, batten down the hatches and just, hold on to what I got and hope that we make it through there. But really, I think, you got to be expanding, no matter what the situation. And it may not be, in the format that you thought it was going to be, a month or two ago. But still, you have to be looking for those opportunities to make that investment. And that may just be investment in time. It may be investment in, doing something like a podcast or something like that. Like what are those things that I can be putting effort into so that we're not sitting still? If you're sitting still right now, you're basically moving backwards. And the ones that I see kind of rising to the top, a lot of great agencies that have their bottom line's being affected too. They're having to furlough people and stuff like that, but they're also doing everything they can to say, okay, well, this is an area that could see us through this. Let's move in that direction. Let's take advantage of that. Let's invest in that, and so that as things start to recover, we're in the best position possible, or we're ahead of everybody else in this. And so that's really been the mentality. I mean, it's not like we run into a pandemic every, few years. So it's hard to say like, oh, when this happens, because that's not really, the likelihood of this happening again is not very likely. But there's always things in a business owner's, life cycle that this isn't going to be the only uncertainty that you run into. I mean, that happens on a weekly basis with businesses, especially small businesses. So, whenever those kinds of things kind of come up throughout, just the general operations of business, let alone times like these, I find myself getting, sucked back into the philosopher's mentality and the Stoic philosophy and things like that, the level-headed mentality of really, really focusing on what you can control, because there's so much that you can't. And if you're focusing at all and wasting 1 second of your time on the things that you can't control, then you're sitting still, and that's absolutely what you can't be doing right now.
Yeah, I think every good business leader has resilience and flexibility sort of built in, or they've learned it through experience. And I think the story that's going to come out of this is everyone is either, there's winners and losers in every situation, and the winners are going to be those who have either applied the flexibility and resilience they've already had, or they learned quickly how to become flexible and resilient to these things. And so I think, because you're right, this hopefully is the only major pandemic situation we deal with in our lifetime, but that doesn't mean there's not going to be other things to overcome that may look completely different. And having gone through this, which luckily everybody now has, it's not like anybody was insulated from this. And as we come through this, we can apply the things that we've learned next time.
Absolutely. And I mean, it's just also the idea that it's very easy, and this is what I'm most impressed with businesses, especially, our clients and things like that. I mean, it'd be very easy to just say, throw up your hands and just be like, well, this is not working out, and basically walk away, basically quit. And, what I haven't seen is a lot of that, and that's, I think, is what's built into, nature. I don't know if it's that of a person, or the person that, starts a business to begin with, or invest in a business, or whatever that may be, or if it's a person who, or if it's an American mentality, or what that is. But there's not a lot of quit going on. There's a lot, you're seeing a lot of resilience, a lot of people trying to innovate, trying to figure out how to make it. And I think that's extremely impressive. But I think knowing that we may not ever see this again, but there's going to be challenges, whether those are business related or personal related, that affect your business. Health, situations, just family and life situations, all of those play a role, into how you operate day to day. And I think this challenge right now is setting a tone for just about everybody, moving forward, and how they can approach, any situation that they're running into.
Yeah. All right. I want to move into some kind of quick hit questions that, we just kind of fly through. So, are you a reader? What's the best book or Like I'm a Cliff's Notes guy. I like to read, but I can't just make it through a book.
I'm an audiobook guy
Okay.
because well, not here lately. I haven't been driving a lot, but I do find myself on the road a lot, and that's audiobooks, podcasts, and stuff like that. But I love consuming audiobooks that are recommended by other business leaders and people that say, hey, this is something that's impacted me, or I just read this book and it's amazing, but I don't, with two little boys at home and stuff like that, I don't get a lot of time to just sit and read. So I take advantage of the time on the road, listening to those books and stuff like that. I would say, on this topic we were just talking about, one that I just recently revisited because, and I've probably read or listened to it at least 10 times over the last 10 years. I probably do it at least once a year. It's called The Obstacle is the Way, and by Ryan Holiday, and it's very Stoic philosophy based, but it applies it's more applicable to different historical figures throughout history, not just philosophers themselves, but former presidents, and just how they leaned on certain mentalities or certain lessons and teachings and applied them to their, the situations they were going through at that time. And it's one of those books that I actually have a stack of them in my office, that when we hire new people, I give them a copy of that book, just because it was really one of those things when I read it, years ago, I was like, this is, there's so much in here that can be applicable to a number of different situations in life. And so I would say, and especially now, it's extremely, valuable, and I highly recommend that one.
Very cool. Do you have any daily routines that you have to go through, things that you do first thing when you wake up or right before you go to bed? I just had a conversation about Shannon Newton at the Arkansas Trucking Association. She's fantastic. Last thing she does before she goes to bed is play a game on her phone. I loved hearing that.
Man, I'm not a super routine heavy person, which is probably odd, because most people in a CEO role or something, they're all about their daily routine and stuff like that. And maybe it's just where I'm at in life because of having little kids and stuff like that. It's hard to build a routine around that. But I tried to make a routine of like the general life's, things, time with kids and stuff like that. But outside of that, I mean, it's, I have my coffee in the morning, but I really am kind of, what is the goals and what are the tasks that we have to accomplish today? I guess, it's just really the night before, I try my best to plan out the next day. Look, so that it's not so much a routine. It's just that I know what the day kind of holds, what I do need to get accomplished, what I hope to get accomplished, and then the lower priority items that, hey, if they don't get done today, when do I expect them to get done? And so,
Sure.
More of a process-driven thing, I guess, than a
I love
routine.
it. Best piece of advice that you've either given or received?
Oh, just in general?
Yeah.
Oh man, I would say, I don't know, it seems so basic, but the best piece of advice that I always kind of come back to, whether it's business, personal, or whatever, is it goes back to that golden rule of just treating people the way you'd want to be treated. Because I think at its core, and you look at everything going on in the world today, you can have your own beliefs, you can feel a certain way, and that's your right, and no one can take that away from you. But also, like, having empathy and putting yourself in someone else's shoes and really understanding, like, would I want that that kind of treatment towards myself? If that's not the case, then you probably shouldn't do it.
Yeah, agreed. Has the pandemic forced you into any new habits or hobbies?
Habits, probably being a little bit more, and maybe not in a good way, but just more vocal on social media.
I think there's a lot of people that's happening.
And I say that not to say that it's probably more of a reaction to it's not like I'm the one out there putting my thoughts into the world. It's just I found myself finding it much harder to keep a filter when I see certain things being said or done, and like used to, I would just be like, yeah, whatever, and keep on scrolling by and stuff like that. I keep finding myself getting drawn back in and like just, trying to help, but most likely it's probably not helping at all.
I have loved seeing everybody's sort of additional engagement on social media lately. It's been both fun to see people who previously weren't too active, and at the same time, it's been a little bit infuriating seeing the people who have always been active be even more active.
Yeah, I think that's the interesting thing, and it's like I said, at certain times I'm like, all right, let's just shut it down.
Yeah.
Let's just
we don't need this anymore.
Let's just stop, and then it's like, but it's kind of my duty to help out here, and
that's right.
No, it's not, but. That's the habit that's being developed, and again, it's probably not the best habit, but
All right, if you wrote a book, what would the title be? Or if you could have a billboard out on 630, what would it say?
See, if I wrote a book, I don't know what the title would specifically be. I'd have to think about that, but I think it would combine some of the things that we've talked about from a personal standpoint and and a professional standpoint. I think people have to, start thinking a bit more about, just the scalability of everything that they do. Like, what are you investing your time into? What are you putting your focus into? How is that going to help you down the road? How is that going to help you grow and develop and things like that? And I think it would be, really focused on some kind of messaging focused on that, and again, it's not even limited to a business standpoint. It's just that I think everything should be done with the idea of building on top of it. That's not the end of the road. Too many people, I think, assume that that's how it works. They don't have the mindset of, I'm going to lay this brick for the next one. And so, yeah.
I love it. All right. One day, I hope we can go back to concerts, but what's your favorite musician? Who are you jamming out to on the road when you're driving? What's your musical taste?
Man, I'm all over the place with music, but my favorite thing to do right now is find a nice, upbeat song that I can show up at my house and tell Alexa to play it so me and my boys can dance a little bit. We've been having a lot of dance parties. And my favorite thing to do is just, I'll be like flipping through the radio or XM or whatever whatever, Spotify, and I find, man, this is really catchy, just so that I can introduce it and come in and be like, I got a new song, and here we go. We're gonna.
So you're jamming out to Taylor Swift all the time?
The Weeknd, a lot of the Weeknd here lately. His latest album is super catchy, super fun, and my boys love to dance to it.
I love it. All right, next time we get to go out to eat and have lunch, where are we going? What's your favorite foods?
Man, I'm really missing Samantha's fried catfish on Fridays. So that's everybody that knows me knows that's where you can find me at lunch on Fridays, and it's been really a bit of a withdrawal that I haven't had that in quite a while, and especially with such nice weather, patio weather right now. I'm like,
we're missing
it's
it
absolutely killing me.
Yeah. So, hopefully any day we're back.
I mean, I'm ready.
You got your table reserved.
I'll be masked up with gloves, whatever it takes. I'll be there.
It's awesome. Well, Zach, thanks so much, man. I really appreciate you taking the time.
Thanks for having me. It's great.
If you liked this episode of Titans of Industry, head to contenttitan.co/podcast for more episodes or subscribe on your favorite podcasting app. Thanks for listening.